you all for being here after 2 years of the NJP, our 8th meeting, and this is our biggest one yet. Thank you all. This is amazing. This is an amazing crowd. Over 400 people are in this room right now. So 2 days ago, Joe Biden gave a speech in Philadelphia. Some people might have seen it, might have heard about it. This speech was given in the birthplace of our democracy at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. This was an extraordinary speech, to say the least. In it, Mr. Biden declared that too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Well, on this we can agree, Mr. Biden. The question is, what do we consider normal? What do we consider normal? And what do the class of people that control Joe Biden think of as normal? The purpose of this speech was to declare war on the white half of America. Straight up and down, that's what it was. It was to say that white citizens are now legitimate targets of state terror and repression. In his delivery, Biden presented an air of exasperation. He's fed up. He's had enough. He's had enough of you. He's had enough of white. He's a man, shall we say, at the end of his rope. He's sick and tired, and he's not going to take it anymore, right? At least this is the act that he was putting on. Well, Mr. Biden is merely a vessel for his Jewish cabinet, and specifically his direct handler, Jewish White House Chief of Staff, Mr. Ron Klain. The exasperation they feel is no doubt real. What Biden and his Jewish handlers are fed up with is not the actual abnormality in America. It is not the constant anti-white rhetoric, not the out-of-control black violence and rioting, not the refusal of the police to do anything to enforce the law, not the hordes of perverted sexual deviants that are encouraged to perform lewd acts in front of children in schoolhouses and libraries. It's none of that. It's white people speaking up about it, opposing it, being tired of it. That's what they're fed up with. They're just done with us. They're tired of us, and they've had enough, and they can't take it anymore. That was the message of Joe Biden's speech. And it was received very well by his extreme leftist base and by Jewish neoliberals and neoconservatives. Now, they are more than thrilled about all of that stuff. The black violence, the perverts in the schools, that's what they want. They're fed up with us. So a few weeks previous to this, Biden was asked a question at a town hall in which the questioner said something about, what about the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms in order to guard against government tyranny, a very classic American meme, no doubt believed by many people in this room, and many people outside of this room across this whole country understand the idea. We have the right to bear arms to guard ourselves, not just against threats, immediate threats, but also the threat of tyranny from our oppressors. And it's not just the right to bear arms. I want to say something very quickly. It's not just the right to bear arms. Increasingly in America, this Second Amendment has been essentially, I think, downgraded to be about the right to purchase a gun at the store or purchase some kind of accessory for that gun that looks cool. So you can develop, put pieces on it and develop a really crazy, cool-looking gun. But do you have the right to actually shoot somebody?
No.
Do you have the right to actually shoot someone that's attacking you, that's threatening your family, that breaks into your house, that's doing violence to you? Not if you're white and they're black. You better believe you don't have that right. So where's the right to self-defense? That's what we want. Not just the right to bear arms, the right to defend ourselves. But Biden says, on behalf of his, the people that control him, you'll need an F-15 to fight America, not an AR-15. That's a very clever line. Good job, nice, okay, very clever, Mr. Biden. But think about what he's joking about. He's joking about turning weapons of war on his own citizens, on white citizens, on Americans. That's what he's really talking about. main target in this speech was the so-called MAGA Republicans. In other words, white people who, in their desperation, have thrown their hopes and their loyalty behind the person of Donald Trump. But this isn't specifically about Donald Trump, his public shenanigans, his penchant for trolling the media, trolling politicians. I'm sure that's very irritating for people like Biden. I'm sure it's kind of annoying. But that's not going to get this kind of a reaction, an open declaration of war because some guy is irritating and annoying and trolls them. I mean, you'd think that they'd be a little more mature than that. Maybe not, But what they're really fed up with is just all of us, the white half of America, the opposition. They thought this was going to go easier. They thought by now we'd be resigned to the fact that we were going to be a minority, that we'd be resigned to the fact that this country was lost to us. But white people stubbornly, some of them through different ways, not all of them have come to our side, they get confused and distorted. But fundamentally what they're saying is we actually deserve to live in a free country. We actually want to live in a free country. So the Jewish ruling class has simply had enough of it. They're fed up and they're ready to embark on a program of open state repression on racial and political grounds. Make no mistake about it, MAGA Republicans is just code for white people. When Biden mentioned the darkness of Charlottesville, that became clear. Charlottesville was not an action of MAGA Republicans. It was an open action of white revolt. And that's what many people in this room were there. It was an open action of white revolt against the Jewish ruling elite, and it shook them to their core. And things haven't been the same since. MAGA Republicans are simply the canary in the coal mine. They're the harbinger of the justified white rage boiling beneath the surface of this country. A genuine and self-conscious white rebellion is forming, while still in its infancy. The Jewish ruling class and Mr. Biden want to drown the baby in the bathtub. We're not going to let them. The speech was met with enthusiasm from Jews and left-wing extremists on Twitter who were also fed up with political and social opposition from normal white people. The extremist libtards on Twitter were crowing that it's about time. Dark Brandon. Thank you. Finally, someone said it, One particular Jewish neoconservative that I'm sure maybe some of us are familiar with, a woman by the name of, or maybe not actually, you might have never heard of this person. A woman by the name of Jennifer Rubin, who used to be the conservative at the Washington Post. She was the Washington Post conservative commentator. She's a well-known neoconservative, pro-Israel warmonger, and of course, a famous anti-white. She said Biden's speech was really of the moment. I'm hoping mass arrest will start anytime soon. Now, she got a little carried away, and she ultimately had to delete this tweet in embarrassment, but the sentiment is there. The sentiment is there. Joe Biden showed it in his, suddenly he's not doing gas. Suddenly he's speaking fluently and cohesively, and the Jews and the Twitter libtards and everybody, they were all following along. This was very encouraging for them to hear somebody finally say, I'm just going to go ahead and crack down and basically destroy my political opponents with direct force. Because they're done with the pretense of democracy. It's not working for them because that gives us an in to push back at them based on the premises that they present to us. Yeah. And they're just like, no, now pro-white rhetoric, it's anti-democratic. Right. It's simply not to be allowed because it's fundamentally anti-democratic. But we're still the majority. Yeah. We're still the majority. While this speech was threatening, it was also somewhat ridiculous. Think about the absurdity of this puppet standing on stage decrying political violence after the summer of 2020, the summer of racial terror, in which blacks and anarchists, without any punishment, without any pushback, in fact, with the connivance of law enforcement, rioted, looted, burned, and murdered across the country in a wave of terror that was directly meant to threaten and intimidate the white population that they had felt got out of line in the 2016 election. It was a direct act of terror. Right now, this country is undergoing a revolution from the top, a revolution of elites. That is a revolution against us. And every revolution has its moment of terror. And that was the summer of 2020. That was their moment of revolutionary terror against the white population of this country. And these people sit here and lecture us about political violence. It's absurd. It's absurd. The legacy of the 2020 summer of terror is still being felt today, with constant attacks and victimization of whites by out-of-control black criminals and the refusal of the authorities to do anything about it. And if you think that blacks don't know this, don't understand, that the authorities are hesitant to the point of almost total refusal to arrest them or even push back on their crimes, you're wrong. They damn well know they're practically untouchable. They know it and they act on it. And the audacity of talking about normality. Normality. Every day, there are dozens of events, possibly hundreds of events, held across America in schools and libraries, whose stated purpose is to expose young children to homosexual men committing lewd acts. I mean, this is their stated purpose. And oftentimes, the parents of these unfortunate children look on approvingly because they're just that brainwashed and blinkered by the Jewish media and the narratives that they're presented with. That they think that they treat this drag stuff like it's a religious ritual. If you notice this, it's almost like it's a transcendent event for them to see a man dressed up like a whore and acting like a complete degenerate and then doing it in front of kids. I mean, think about how sick this is. And they're talking about normality. And they're talking about normality. And they're talking about us and others that oppose this like they're the social problem. And this is what Dark Brandon is about. Dark Brandon is being fed up with people not liking these things. With people not liking black crime, white victimization, drag queen story hour. I mean, I don't even want to call it that. It's pervert touching kids hour. Like, it's, like, that's what Dark Brandon is about. To further underscore the ridiculousness of this speech, he gave the speech in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Now, I don't know how many of you have visited Independence Hall in Philadelphia. I have. It's part of a very small little enclave down there on the waterfront with a number of monuments and parks and museums. Right across the street is the Liberty Bell, and there's a small lawn. And it's not a very large area of Philly. And that area is completely surrounded by one of the most violent cities in America. So there was at least 3 police sirens that went off audibly, directly in the background of his speech while he was delivering it, meaning that even as he's there saying all these threats to white people, blacks are out there just shooting each other, shooting the place up. They had 600 murders in Philly in 2021, a record for the city, thousands of shooting, and of course, like anywhere, 90+% of this is the responsibility of blacks. It's ridiculous to even pretend otherwise. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it because you know that they know what not to say. This is one of the key things about political life in America, is everybody knows what not to say. That makes me think maybe people aren't quite as clueless as they pretend. Because if everyone's clueless about the same thing, it seems like everyone knows what to pretend to be clueless about. So the message is out there. Jews are running the country, blacks are untouchable, and whites are the enemy. Everyone knows it, everyone gets it, and it's repeated on TV with endless repetition. It's the constant refrain we hear again and again. Interestingly, Biden didn't actually attack the Republican Party in the speech. In fact, he praised them. It was a pro-Republican speech. He says he wants the real Republicans back, the true Republicans, not this minority of irresponsible people or whatever it would be. But let's be honest, the so-called MAGA Republicans at this point are now the majority of that party because they got a little taste of something that they thought was real, and they're not going back to like tax cuts and like war for Israel and that kind of crap, and they desperately want back the normal politics of Reaganism versus, you know, Clintonism. Clinton-Bush years is what they want back, just the same old bullshit. We want to give money to the poor, we want to take money from the rich, and then we want to do a war for Israel, and that's what they're arguing about endlessly, right? They want that back. They don't want populism. They're sick of it. Even the distorted form of populism represented by the MAGA movement, they're dead tired of it. So he didn't attack the Republican Party. He was actually very pro-Republican. He wants to help and do the Republican Party a big favor. He wants to rid them of those annoying elements, their actual voters, that are holding them back from being a normal political party in America today. He's pro-Republican Party. So how do the Republicans respond to this generous offer by Joe Biden? Well, what they did was they begged him to apologize for dehumanizing them and comparing them to Nazis. So rather than call out the open move towards totalitarian neoliberalism, the open move to a direct war on whites, and attempting to rally the actual people in opposition, they are simply going to Democrats are the real Nazis, which is rhetoric that has failed them for decades, that has never excited anybody. It was not Democrats that are the real Nazis that got Trump elected in 2016. It was close the borders, kick out the immigrants, bring back jobs, bring back the economy. That's what got people excited. That's what people voted for. Nobody gives a shit if Democrats are the real Nazis. That's like a stupid own from an online message forum that is not even real. It's not even real. Now, Republicans say a lot of things. There's one word that they never say. White. That's right. They go out of their way not to mention it. In fact, it's not because they don't want to talk about race either. They're happy to talk about blacks. They're happy to talk about Jews. It's only when the topic switches over to maybe having to defend whites or stand up for their interests. Suddenly, we don't want to racialize things. We don't approve all this race rhetoric. We want everyone just to be equals and blah, blah, blah. We're all individuals. They actually don't do that for blacks or Jews. They're happy to treat them special as their own group and give them special favors, as Donald Trump's $500 billion platinum plan proved, and is basically the fact that the entire government is run in the interests of Jewish people shows. The last time I can think of that I can remember that a Republican actually mentioned the word white was actually fairly recently. It was Representative Mary Miller, who said during a speech about the Supreme Court's decision on abortion something like, it's a victory for the right to life. So it was a slip-up. It was a slip-up, but the Jewish media was right on top of it, accusing her of saying this was a victory for white life. But if you're actually an opponent of abortion, and you deeply believe in this as a moral cause, why isn't it a victory for white life? Why can't you say that? What's wrong with saying it? Like, why if you're posing as a deep opponent of abortion and you believe in the right to life, now I respect that belief if it's truly and deeply held. But that would mean that it is a victory for white life, wouldn't it? It doesn't mean it's only a victory for white life, but it's a victory for white life. But no, it shows that she doesn't even believe in it, because if it is a victory for white life, then it's a bad thing. That was what her response showed. So how can a party that will bend over backwards to say that no matter what, they would never do anything, they would never dream of doing anything that would actually benefit white people, how can they actually present any kind of valid opposition to Brandon and his Jewish cabinet? They can't. I want to just say one thing about this cabinet. It's the most Jewish we've seen, I think. I'm not sure, don't quote me on this, I don't want to lie. It's a very Jewish cabinet. Now, the ADL released an article either yesterday or this morning about the reaction to the Dark Brandon speech, talking about people online, conspiracy theorists, white supremacists, etc., saying, well, he's just doing the bidding of his Jewish masters. Now, apparently, we're not the only ones saying this. This is out there. Lots of people say this, and lots of people observe the obvious thing, which is the Biden cabinet is run by Jews. Now, the ADL simply says, this is terrible, these are conspiracy theorists, white supremacists. They never bother to refute the claim. And the reason is because they can't. And so let's talk for 1 second about Joe Biden's cabinet, who are the people that are actually running his government. So the cabinet is made up of 24 people. 6 of these people are Jewish. Now that would already be an overrepresentation no matter what particular posts they held. That's 25%. Well, Jews are about 2% of the total population. But it's not just that there are 6 members of the cabinet. They are the only and most powerful members. So, for example, Janet Yellen, the Federal Reserve chairperson, controls our money. Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, controls foreign affairs and the United States' relationship with other countries. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, controls the Justice Department and our good friends at the FBI. I don't think I need to add anything more about them. I think that's been covered for the night. Alejandro Mayorkas. Now, you might think this guy's like a Mexican or something. No, he's Jewish. First of all, it would already be ridiculous for the Homeland Security Chief to be Mexican, but he's actually Jewish. He's the director of Homeland Security. He controls, supposed to control the border and so-called counterterrorism. Avril Haines is the director of National Intelligence. She oversees at last count, I believe it was 17 different intelligence agencies, but don't quote me on that, it could be more by now, that the United States government runs. And then, of course, we have Ron Klain, the White House Chief of Staff, who is the direct puppeteer of Joe Biden himself. So these are the people that are using Joe Biden to openly declare war on white Americans. And yes, they are Jewish. I mean, the other cabinet posts are all sort of bureaucratic and administrative. These are the people that exercise real power. These are the people that control force. They control law. They control the border. They control police. They control intelligence. They control the military. These are the people with the real power, and they're all Jewish. So make no mistake about it. The GOP has no intention and no ability to fight back against this declaration of war that they have made on whites in America. The only ones that can do it are us. This is where we come in. So we founded the NJP 2 years ago, just a little bit over 2 years ago. It was August 15th, 2020. We were in a barn in Pennsylvania. Some of you there, raise your hand or clap for yourselves if you guys were there. Who was there? Who was there? Round of applause, everybody who was there. And round of applause to people that weren't there and are here now. We had about 80 to 100 people in a barn in Pennsylvania when I gave the speech that you just saw a clip from. And we decided we had to do something about what was going on in the country at that time. And we all remember the summer of terror, the summer of 2020. And we decided we need something more than what we've been doing, just sort of protesting once in a while, mainly doing podcast journalism. We need to have an organized body. We need to have an organized vehicle that gives direction to the white struggle. We can't anymore have this sort of decentralized opposition, this sort of libertarian idea of a decentralized opposition, like you do something here, someone else is doing something here, we're all kind of saying the same things, we'll do metapolitics, and eventually magic happens and then everyone's mind changes. It's a nice theory, and it's a comfortable theory for a lot of people, but it's not going to work. Nothing that's not centralized ever actually wins and takes power. You can see this all the time. Just look at how Jews operate vis-a-vis whites. They're united, we're divided, we are millions more than them, yet they still control us. It's because they have central authority and power that's directed. That's what we need in order to counter them, and that's what we are building and trying to provide to white people in this country. That's why we formed this party. Probably the worst thing that afflicts white people right now is moral ennui, or anomie. These are words, big words taken from Joseph Jordan's intro to the book that you guys can get today. It's moral uncertainty. It's second-guessing ourselves. It's not quite sure where we stand. And this is the result of decades, since the end of the war, since the end of the last Great War, World War II, and even before, of Jews controlling the media, and gaining ever more power in the educational institutions and the government, therefore controlling the narratives and the messages that we hear. So we don't ever hear ourselves spoken about in a positive light. Now think about this. This is a very serious point. You might hear a white person spoken about positively, one individual, but they will only be spoken about positively as an individual, and their race and who they are will never be mentioned. But if it's a black person or a Jewish person, their race and who they are is almost always mentioned along with whatever positive things are being said about them. As well, you'll often hear positive things about Jewish people as a people, or black people as a people, or even Hispanics, which is a linguistic group. But you'll still hear positive things about them. But when the word white comes up, it's only ever a term of abuse. It's only ever a term of abuse. And what this has done after decades, it has demoralized the white population. So many of them feel that fighting for ourselves and fighting for our rights and our future is either immoral or not worth it. But that's why we're doing this. We want to give people a moral feeling about being white. We want to moralize them, make them feel like, no, it's not wrong to be white. It's good to be white. It's right to be white. So one of the things we've done, what we've done with the NJP, we've had several mass meetings, and they've grown in size. That provides social proof. All of you here to hear these speeches, which are then going to be broadcast out to the internet and to the world for people to see, they're going to hear you here, and they're going to think, wow, there's a lot of people there. I never would have thought a so-called white supremacist or a pro-white meeting would ever get that many people. I didn't think anyone cared. I didn't think it was popular. But they're going to see and listen, hear all of you responding to what we're saying, and they're going to be like, wow, that actually is popular. That actually is something to that. Yeah! So that's one way that we do it. The other way is through some of the political actions that we have taken. We went to Waukesha after the openly anti-white attack. We challenged the authorities in Waukesha to acknowledge that it was an anti-white attack. Some of them, if those of you saw the documentary produced in conjunction with Media to Rise, will see some of them would acknowledge it in private, but they did not want to acknowledge it in public. And the reason is because the Republican Party is literally paid not to talk about that kind of thing. That is their job. Their job is to not talk about it. And so if they do, it's a slip-up, it's a mistake. They're going to get in trouble. In fact, just by going to Waukesha that day, the two senators from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson and Tammy something, I can't remember the Democrat's name, they did a bipartisan condemnation of outside elements coming to agitate. But what about Black Lives Matter? Did anybody condemn those outside elements for coming to so-called agitate? No. They were not expecting us. We caught them off guard, and they had to say something dumb. And so that's what we've done. We want to catch them. Well, they are dumb, yes. We want to catch them off guard, and we want to force them into showing their hand. Because no matter how much rhetoric we've heard, it's always sort of implied No one ever just says, we just want to kill white people or get rid of white people. That's a bit too far, and it makes them the bad guy. So what we want to do, what we've done, and what we try to do every time we go out, we want to force them into a situation where if you come to stand against us, you have to admit you're the bad guy. And they do it sometimes, but usually they just run away. But either way, we win. Either way, we win. And I have one quick anecdote, or two quick anecdotes that are connected about the power of moral force and moralizing ourselves and becoming a moral force, opposing this ongoing genocide and replacement of our race. There was 2 murders in the last year. One was a 14-year-old girl in Fargo, North Dakota, who was murdered by a black immigrant named Arthur Colley. She was, it was savage. I don't even want to go over what happened to her. It was a very savage thing that happened. Justice for Jupiter, that's right, yeah. Very savage thing that happened to this young girl. And the other case just happened a few months ago in Akron, Ohio. A young man named Ethan Liming, who was out playing pranks with his friends, shooting water guns at people for fun and hijinks, was ambushed and beaten to death by 3 blacks who are trying to pretend that they thought this was a real gun or something like that. It's an absurd claim, and we've gone over the details of these cases many times. But I want to talk about the moral narratives involved in this. So, to his credit, to his eternal credit, Jupiter Paulson's father did not bend before the anti-white media narrative. He did not do the usual thing. And the usual thing that white people do when this, or are expected to do, are pressured to do, and are bullied into doing when these kinds of tragedies afflict them, is to immediately say, I'm not a racist. I love black people. Why would you say that? I mean, it's not even like, it's just not even relevant, right? It's like a very odd thing to do. Like a black person murders your family member, and the media comes with the microphones and says, oh no, I'm not a racist. It's very strange. Well, what it shows is that white people are actually brutally oppressed in this country. We're actually very mentally oppressed by the fact that those kind of reactions. And so, Mr. Paulson did not do this. In fact, we went to Fargo and we did a demonstration on behalf of Jupiter Paulson, and Mr. Paulson was invited by the media to condemn us, to throw us under the bus, to say we want nothing to do with these white supremacist interlopers, blah, 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 the whole script that they wanted him to say, and he didn't do it. And as a result of him not doing it, the authorities in Fargo, who had been conniving to get Arthur Colley off on some sort of insanity plea or some kind of slap on the wrist defense, have had instead to charge him as a murderer and actually throw the book at him. And they did this. And they did this because they were afraid of the moral narrative on our side that we were wielding when we went to Fargo, and the moral narrative and the moral power that Mr. Paulson had. Contrast this, unfortunately, with the Liming family, who did read the script. And what happened to them? Well, the murderers of their son are going to get off with a slap on the wrist. One of them probably won't do any jail time, and one of them, the most serious jail time he faces is probably 3 years. And these are three black men. These are 3 grown black men that beat a teenage boy to death and crushed his skull on the pavement. And they will probably not face much punishment, if any at all. And I understand why the Liming family did it, but I can't actually say it's all right. Because ultimately it's a harsh thing, because I know they suffered a loss. But look at what they have enabled, and look at what they are now going to enable for other people. Because if blacks get the message that this stuff goes unpunished, they'll do it again. They'll do it again and again and again. So we have to use the moral force of right and not be afraid to stand up. Because when you actually throw it back in their face, like, no, my son was murdered because he was white, and you're enabling it. You want white people to die. You hate white people. You're part of this machine that is killing white people. They will want to shut you up so fast, they'll run away from you. Just the way they did from us when we were in Akron 2 weeks ago. They ran away from us. We were 1 block away from hundreds of anarchists at a street fair. And you know how many people came to meet us? One middle-aged woman. One middle-aged woman. And that's the power. Of having the moral weight of right on your side. Now, we had 50 young men out there, so obviously if they had come, we would have been capable of defending ourselves, but it's not purely a physical struggle. People are ready for that if it comes to it in defense, but the struggle is moral. The fundamental struggle is moral, and we had won that battle before the day had even started. And we will keep winning it. So that is the operating theory of the NJP. That is how we want to represent whites and rally them to our cause, and ultimately build this party until we can take our country back from the Jews. Thank you very much.